Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Other Record Labels. I'm your host, Scott Orr. Thank you so much for joining me as we talk about the art and culture of running an indie record label. Something cool happened last week, and I wanted to share it with you in this little episode in between one of our interviews, and I hope you've been enjoying the interviews. I have booked a few more interviews at the end of this year to air next year, and so we're already well into the next 4 or 5 months of interviews, so I'm excited for you to hear those. Something happened last week, and I wanted to kind of talk about it. I was planning on talking about something else this week, but I've shifted things a little bit because of this kind of thought that popped in my head as a looking for and finding ways to make our interaction with listeners and quote unquote fans, make that connection a little bit more personal. So last week, there's this label in Michigan called Writing Records, and they sent me a little care package in the mail that had some stickers and a 12-inch record, some CDs, and what else? Buttons and a little cool little plexi disc. I tell you this for two reasons. Number one, I can be bought. So if there's any question about the morality or the ethical standards of other record labels, then now you know it's very corrupt and I can be bribed. But no, I'm joking. I'm half joking. You can send me stuff all you want. But there was something incredible that happened in this moment when I opened up this package and I read this letter that he had sent me, and I thought it was remember, this is Writing Records in Michigan. I really do want you to check them out. But it was something really cool because instantly I had this permanent, intimate connection with this label. Think about how much music we hear on an ongoing basis in 1 week. I mean, maybe 100 records in a week wouldn't be crazy to say that. And we, a lot of it is just megabytes on our hard drive, or hardly. And there's something needed to make a personal connection with a label or with an artist. And that's kind of what I want to talk about today, because getting this package, it was eye-opening, because instantly I am this forever cheerleader of this band, even though all music is subjective. And while it's great music, it's still just music. And there are some people who like it, and there are some people who don't like it. And that's the same way with all the records that we release. And obviously we love our records, and I've released records that I absolutely adore, my favorite records of the year, but they don't really land with other people. And that's okay. Music is subjective. But I think to help that process a little bit, to maybe kind of like weld the music with the listener a little bit more, and especially in a digital world, we need to find ways to make that connection personal. I kind of outlined a few here that just popped into my head, and I'd love it if you were to write me back at podcast at Other Record Labels and share some of your insights. And if you listen to the interviews we've done, we have one coming up that's really cool, a really cool discussion on making it physical, making the connection with fans a little bit more physical. Excuse me. And we've talked about giving away download codes, and at Top Shelf, they talked about including a download code and something specific, a little recommendation in every order. So this is a hot topic. It's something we've talked about a lot, and we're going to talk about more in this digital world. How do we make the digital world analog, so to speak? I think the first thing to keep in mind is to make it physical. This is what we're talking about right now. And I know a lot of labels who do this. They give free label swag. Every time I get a physical order, which isn't a lot, I try to include 1 or 2 stickers that we've done a roll of like 200 stickers a couple years ago, or maybe it was like 500. I don't remember, because it seems to be endless. And so I just give away as many as possible. Printed download codes, that's another thing I got from Writing Records, a couple printed download codes. And I talked about the importance of that from another label called Painted Blonde that sent me a download code. And there was something really intimate about that. And I think it's really cool. Excuse me. So the printed download codes, a personal note, I think that is incredibly effective as well. Handwriting note, free extra stock, like extra CDs that you have. A lot of us have a run of CDs that we're trying to get rid of. Maybe like you did like 1,000,007 inches. who knows? Maybe you have a album sampler. They used to do that a lot in the old days when CDs were a little bit more common, is include like an album sampler CD in with every order. That's really cool. So I think the first thing in a way to make it personal is to make it physical. We talked with a great label, and I won't spoil it, and it's coming up in like 3 or 4 weeks from now, where we talk about the concept of making it physical. I think that's such a great term to think about, especially in this digital world. And I'll expand a little bit more on that digital thoughts. The second thing is to make it authentic, to share your story, to give a status report, express your gratitude. Another cool thing, I know Z Tapes, they do this by sending candy from their country. And I think there's like a way to kind of show your national pride is a kind of a cool thing, but to make it authentic, just to say, hey, there's a real person behind this order. And you, the fan, you, the listener, the customer, are making an impact. And so I think there's an opportunity to be vulnerable and to be honest. And I think that's important. I think that is a really great way to make a personal connection with a fan, is to be honest with them. And heck, maybe even sharing, the status of the label and how difficult it is, and how their order makes a difference. The third way and the final way is summing it all up, and is to make it personal. Use their names, reply to each buyer personally. I know that's not possible all the time for every label, but we're talking to a bunch of different labels at different stages and at different levels of growth. And I think for some of us, it is possible to handwrite a little note and say, hey, Dave, thanks for placing this order. And that's where you have the opportunity to share a little bit of your story and to express how much you appreciate their order. I think that little thing could make a huge deal. I know, sometimes we get something in the mail and you open it up and it's just the record. And it's like, okay, great, that's what I ordered. But those times where you open it up and it explodes with a bunch of cool little things like candy and hand notes and, bonus things, that makes a huge connection. And I visualize it as, we know all of these labels, we know all of these bands in our subconscious, but to fuse the label or the artist with the fan in a really intimate way, it's almost like the equivalent of like walking around in a mall, passing by thousands of people anonymously versus maybe standing with one of those people in line and sharing a joke and shaking their hand. And I think there's a difference. All of a sudden, that one person becomes way more important and personal versus the thousands of people. I think that's the visualization I have, is that when an order comes in, it's an anonymous name. It's someone I don't really know in a country I've never been to. And I think we need to find ways to kind of fuse that relationship a little bit more. One thing I want to kind of address is, if you're like me, you're listening to this and you're thinking, I don't do that many physical orders. There's a lot of labels at a lower level of growth, and we don't have as much physical product. And a lot of our interaction with customers happen in the digital realm. And I understand that. And I think we still need to look for ways to kind of fuse that connection. Maybe that is maybe that's just an email. Something happened a couple of years ago. We had this release from an artist named Benjamin. It was a new release, a new artist, and Bandcamp picked up the record. And for some reason, this album, this was in 2015, it's called The Bear and the Barn Owl, and it just kind of like exploded, quote unquote, like a mini little explosion. For indie label my size, I thought it was an explosion. And a lot of people bought the record. And so I was just so encouraged, because it was such a personal record for me, that I went to Bandcamp, and there's a lot of details you get when somebody buys even just a digital product. So I got their email and I sent them, I didn't necessarily add them to an email list, but I sent a personal email from my email account, typed out, and just said, there's a bit of copy and pasting, but I just said, hey, thanks for buying this record. It was a really, special record for us. We didn't think it would do so well, and I just wanted to say thanks. I don't think, I mean, I think I maybe heard back from like 2 or 3 people out of like the maybe 30 or 40 I emailed, but it just meant something to me. I don't know what came of it. I don't know if some of those people are still fans of the artist or the label, but I felt like the right thing to do. And so I think in the digital world, there is still a way to make it personal and to make it physical. And obviously, the second note of that is in the physical world. If you are a label who primarily ships tapes or vinyl or CDs, don't just send out an envelope without printing off a flyer of news about your label, a personal story about your label, or perhaps advertising other records or even including other records in that order. I know a ton of labels do this. This is not inventing anything new. This is something that we see all the time, but I think it's a good reminder for someone who hasn't considered it, and obviously budget is an issue, but I think it's a really important thing to do. I want to give another shout out to Writing Records because that was such a sweet little box I got. And please, folks, don't feel pressured to send me free things or just cash. I mean, you don't have to feel pressured. That's crazy. But if you do, then maybe the label gods are talking to you and you need to listen. No, I'm just joking, but that was a really special thing. And I just instantly realized how it took this digital ones and zeros world and brought it into my living room. The record is on my record player right now, and the sticker is on my guitar and another one on my water bottle. And it's all of a sudden now the label that was out there in the world with tons of other record labels has now come into my house and made a personal connection. And I just think that's really important. And that is a macrocosm of of what we should be looking to do on a daily basis with listeners. Thank you so much for listening. We've got a huge, cool little industry insider thing coming up next. And I'm excited for you to listen to that. And if you haven't already, you can download our free guide, which has more of this kind of discussion ongoing about how to improve as a label. And you can get that by going to otherrecordlabels.com. Thanks for listening.